What job is useless? My very first job. I'm a toxicologist and was hired by a very big private laboratory. My main job was to sort and redirect case files depending on the time at which the results came out. The documents were sent to me in Excel. I was getting paid to just click sort by date descendingly. Worked at a steel factory, in their lab, during their busy shift overnight while power was cheaper. The furnaces would send samples to the lab for testing, and about 15 minutes later would get back chemical composition. The lab and the furnaces were separated by 5 floors and 1,500 feet, and we communicated by pneumatic tube. If the furnace was having problems, the lab had nothing to test. But I had to be ready at any moment to receive a sample and run my tests. I would say that out of 2,080 hours in a year, I worked about 80 of them. I really should have learned guitar, or another language or something. Instead, I played a lot of Candy Crush. We have a specific security guard we've had for 13 plus years now, and is pretty useless. The security guard lives there and has a TV. He watches telenovelas most of the time. All he does is open the gate, and doesn't even bother to even inspect though, since according to his logic 99% of people who can afford a car aren't but harmful people. He doesn't ask names or house numbers, just opens the gate whenever he sees a car. Anyone can come in if they have a car. He doesn't even inspect faces. And do you know the worst part? When moving into the Privada, you are supplied with your own control remote. The gates are also automatic. I took a job scheduling residential fact technicians for a mid-sized company after a few years of working in the field. A few months in, the company ended its residential program to focus on commercial. Thing is, they already had commercial schedulers. My boss told me she'd find me a new role, but then she took another job elsewhere and left. I stayed as a scheduler with no one to schedule in a department that no longer existed. No one in the office seemed to realize this, and for over half a decade, I would show up, make friendly conversation in the break room while making my coffee, and then literally just did nothing the rest of the day. Having left a stressful job, it was glorious. Occasionally someone would ask me an FAQ or system-related question over email, and that was it. I made sure everyone liked me by bringing in bagels every Monday and donuts every Friday. Then COVID happened, and now I was doing nothing at home. When I learned the company was being sold, I figured I wouldn't tempt fate anymore and applied elsewhere. My department had gave a glowing recommendation, having no idea what I even did but knowing I was friendly and helped him jump his car a few times. To the department I was admitting was downsized, but they forgot about me and I essentially took a 6-year paid vacation. This reminds me of some Reddit post I read a while back where something similar happened to someone else. They basically broke their leg or something like that. The company had a little remote office, like basic one room or something, close to this guy's home. The company offered for the guy to work there until his leg was healed. Guy is working there when his whole department gets shuttered. Almost the whole department, including his department head and managers, all get laid off or transferred. The op in the whole thing basically got forgotten about, and eventually, he stops getting work sent his way. It got to the point where the guy was setting up his console in this office and playing video games, or his girlfriend was showing up, and they would have sex. I think he eventually realized it was best if he did something productive and used the time to take online classes so he could get another degree, or whatever. The dude finally finished his degree and applied for a well-paying job at another company. It was finally when he submitted his 2 weeks notice that someone higher up finally realized something was fishy. They were asking him what exactly he did for the company, and when they eventually started piecing together what kind of happened, they were threatening to sue him for scamming the company. The whole thing was crazy. At Psychic, our golden retriever was getting joint therapy, shoulder injury, worked with a vet. Dog did swimming 3 days a week in a heated pool where he could exercise without putting weight on the joint. Also did some exercises. Is now fine. The place also did laser therapy and acupuncture for dogs. Someone said something about Hudson, which is our dog's name, only they were talking to another dog. Oh, they said, that's the dog Psychic's dog. Apparently you could find out what your dog was thinking. I know what my dog is thinking. Most of the time he either wants what I'm eating or he wants me to throw the ball. Used to know a lady in Nevada who was a pet medium. She would typically charge folks about $150,000 per hour and would be the medium between the people and their deceased pets. Now, before you call her a terrible person for taking advantage of folks during a tragic loss in their life, I'll mention that I listened in on a couple of her phone calls, and she was essentially being a grief counselor for these people. People would usually pour their heart out to her, telling her that they felt like they didn't do enough to save their pet, and she'd reassure them that they did all that they could and that their pets knew that the owner loved them. She'd also encourage the owners to adopt new animals in their place, because there's lots of animals out there who need the same love that the owner gave to the deceased animal. It really was a sweet thing. Years ago, I was reading an article in Popular Science about the worst jobs in science. There were some pretty gross ones, as you can imagine, quite a few dealing with animal husbandry, as well as people who have to kill and dissect the brains of lab rats to figure out how chemical X impacts their development. And then, about midway down the list, I saw it, metric system advocate. Apparently, with all the rage over the metric system back in the 70s, the Carter administration decided we needed to have a federal office, probably somewhere in the Department of the Interior, I'd guess, in charge of promoting use of the metric system. It never really caught on. Interest and funding dwindled, and now they're down to like 1 or 2 people. Can you imagine trying to change careers with that on your resume? An elevator attendant. I'm so old, I remember when they had these in department stores. While shopping with my grandma one day, we got in an elevator and the attendant asked if we wanted the 2nd floor. My grandma replies, "Why, yes. How did you know?" He says, "Mom, there's only 2 floors, and we're currently on the 1st one." Mine. I'm a management consultant, and while I have quite a bit of industry knowledge and experience, my clients either have the same knowledge or they aren't willing to accept change. Oftentimes, my firm gets paid a lot of money to make very little difference strategically and or operationally. Where we do add value is in implementing enterprise-wide software solutions. Why do I stay? The money is pretty good given the futility. Telemarketers. I don't know a single person who has actually purchased something from a telemarketer. Maybe it's something the older generation does, but everyone hates them and immediately hangs up on them around me. Check it out. Last year I had to go to India to visit a customer at a government facility. They had a lot of problems with little monkeys getting into the building. The solution: hire a guy with a big monkey on a lad to scare away the little monkeys. Actually, Chief Monkey Scarer sounds like an awesome job. Imagine the business cards. I went to the Bronx Zoo years ago and they had this indoor lemur exhibit, except the walkway that people used in that space was not fully closed off from the lemurs. So the lemurs would get a little too close to people out of curiosity. The zoo apparently decided the best solution was to hire a person with a squirt gun. If a lemur got too close, this teenager would squirt him with the squirt gun and the lemur would go running off again. I don't know why they thought this was better than some kind of fancy knitting, but they did. I couldn't stop laughing about some dude putting lemur squirter on their resume. A friend of mine worked at a government office. While he was on leave, there was a reorganization, and somehow he managed to not be fired nor get a new job. When he returned, his manager and the manager's manager both had moved on to new jobs in the private sector, but his office was still there, so he just went back to work. He did for some weeks try to figure out who he should report to, but was just referred to different people that did not reply, promised to get back to him, or just referred him to someone else, so eventually he just gave up. Then there was a need for his office, and he had to vacate it. So he just went home, and that was fine because he had cleared his backlog of work and was not really motivated because there was nobody he could talk to, report to, or assign tasks to him. He is still getting paid. While it's a billion-dollar industry, health insurance literally exists to prevent you from cashing out on what you paid into. They have little to no medical knowledge, make everything more expensive, and exist solely as a useless middleman to make themselves rich. Share your thoughts in the comments, subscribe to the channel. Good luck.